Shortly after, so first of all, moms are actively engaged in caregiving behavior from the moment the pups are being birthed. And in mammals, maternal care is a defining characteristic actually of mammalian behavior. So there's quite a bit of conservation across species, but there's a few categories of behavior that moms tend to show. So they provide food in the form of milk and lactation, also a defining characteristic of mammals. They will protect their infants if there's any sort of threat from a predator, even a conspecific. They'll also provide warmth, so they'll build a nest. This is particularly important for rodents as they tend to be they tend to have not a lot of capability to regulate their own body temperature when they're first born. So the nest is really important for that. So they'll keep them warm. So those are, I sort of described it in the context of rodents, but many of these behaviors are conserved across species. So non-human primates, humans, also nurse, also carry infants around, also protect the young. There are all kinds of changes that are happening across pregnancy. And really, when we think about the hormonal changes that are expediting these processes, they're happening really at the very end of pregnancy, right before birth. So that's probably the two biggest hormones that we think about when we think about hormonal changes during pregnancy are estradiol, which would be part of what we would think of maybe more commonly as estrogen. And then progesterone is also changing. And progesterone, the hormone progesterone, literally means progestation. So progesterone is climbing throughout pregnancy, as is estradiol. And then around the time of birth, there's just this fallout.
They are changing throughout the pregnancy, but roughly speaking, they're going way up and then they're coming back down later at the time of birth.
Stress is a major predictor of mood disorders throughout pregnancy and in the postpartum period. And I really think, again, we're sort of just in the beginning stages of understanding the complexities of how stress really does affect hormones and also how hormones can affect our stress reactivity. During pregnancy and in the postpartum period are one of the systems that's being altered by these hormones is the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which regulates our stress response.
Why? So just to give people the punchline here, they gave mothers psilocybin.
Always feel as though anytime we have something that is showing a lot of potential as a therapeutic, we should include the postpartum period, right? Particularly given that there's such a high risk, such a really true vulnerability for the development of mood disorders in this period to begin with. You could take one dose and then wait for it to clear and resume breastfeeding.
Got it.
So across all females that were treated with psilocybin, the biggest effect that we saw was an anxiogenic effect.
What would you say to people in terms of the human implications here?
I would say, first and foremost, I would say that mice are not humans, of course, but I do think that what we have uncovered here is, I think it's pretty clear that psilocybin can produce different effects in the postpartum period, possibly related to postpartum hormonal milieu. And so I think that this doesn't mean that psilocybin should be completely not considered in the postpartum period or couldn't ever be a treatment. But I do think that it calls for some caution, and I think it calls for a lot more experiments to better understand how and why we saw these